Hello and welcome to the Week 11 recap of the NPL. I'm your host Dave, and I will be getting this show on the road. Just a disclaimer, most of these battles were in fact sweeps, so if I don't have that much to say, that's totally not my problem. Moving on to our first battle, we have the Montreal Valiants versus the San Antonio Swamperts. Looking at the team matchup, it looks like the Valiants don't really have all too much to touch Skarmory, except for possibly Slowbro. I mean, unless it's one of those especially defensive Skarmories, which some people actually do run these days, which is a bit annoying. Likewise, Weavile does pose a decent threat to the Swampert's team, in which it can low kick, Heat Ran, ISO Crash, or Night Slash, or even knock off Celebi, ISO Crash Dragonite, or knock off Metagross, so Weavile would definitely be one of the Valiant's win conditions for this battle. Getting into what actually happened, as I said before, the Valiants couldn't really touch Skarmory except for Slowbro, but unfortunately Slowbro got kind of picked off in the beginning of the battle, so in the long run he just couldn't really touch the thing, and he also couldn't really keep up with removing hazards as well, because Skarmory kept setting up a Stealth Rock, and that just kept ripping apart things like his Weavile, Staraptor, and also Kyurem Black. We did see Final Gambit from Staraptor, not exactly the most fabulous Final Gambit I've seen, but it was still pretty entertaining to watch a Final Gambit Staraptor. There was a little bit of hacks in this battle, I guess. Weavile missed ISO Crash at a key point. Toward the end of the battle, the Swampers used an Agiligros, and that surprisingly didn't outspeed the Valiant's Weavile for some reason, so I guess Weavile might have been scarfed or something, I don't know. But in the end, Agiligros ended up sweeping the rest of the Valiant's team, and this led to a 4-0 victory for the San Antonio Swamperts. Next up, we have Manaphy City versus the Atlanta Braviaries. Looking at the team matchup, we see that Trev brought a mix of really powerful Pokemon along with a bunch of really interesting ones, such as he brought really great powerhouses such as Hoopa Unbound, Excadrill, and Greninja, while he also brought Pokemon that could have unexpected sets such as Excelgor, Heliolisk, or even Seismitoad. Looking at what Manaphy City brought, they brought quite a lot of special attackers, along with one really good physical wall, being Hippowdon. So overall, both teams look pretty much hyper offensive, except for one Pokemon on each team. Getting into what happened in the battle, I do think the Braviaries did an exceptionally good job using their Excelgor, in which they didn't Final Gambit pretty much at all. Final Gambit was pretty much the fear factor in this entire battle, because what Trev used was a special attacking Excelgor with Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, and I think Grass Knot. I could be wrong with that. And of course Final Gambit being the fear factor move. And he did a really nice job not immediately using Final Gambit, because I mean, overall, Manaphy City's team was really weak to grass and poison moves. So he did a really good job using Excelgor, in my opinion. There was a little bit of hacks toward the end of the battle. Hoopa Unbound did miss a Gunk Shot on Sylveon, which possibly mattered, I'm not too sure, because that ended up getting taken out by something else. I want to say it was Greninja, but I can't remember. So overall, it came down to a 2v2 at the end of the battle, and Greninja was able to sweep both of Manaphy City's last two Pokemon. So that was a really good battle in my opinion. I do think it just came down to who used the Pokemon strategies better. And this ended with a 2-0 victory for the Atlanta Braviaries. Moving on to our next battle, we have the Phoenix Sunkern versus the Colorado Avalugs. Looking at the team matchup, first thing we see, of course, is the level 1 Sunkern with a Focus Sash. I will get into that later. it looks like Cheeseway has brought quite a bunch of hyper-offensive Pokemon. In fact, his entire team's hyper-offensive. While it looks like the Oblongs have brought what looks to be like a balanced offensive team. I do see Rotom Wash and Mew being the walls, Klefki being utility, along with we have physically offensive Entei, physically offensive Landorus T, and either specially or physically offensive Altaria. So it does look like it's balanced team versus hyper offense for the most part, and there are people outside my door making strange noises, so I apologize if that gets kind of loud. Getting into the battle, right off the bat we see the level 1 Sunkern doing its thing, which is taking a hit, going into its focus sash at level 1, endeavoring, and I think it used Endeavor against the Klefki, so that pretty much got trapped in by Magnezone with no HP at all, so Sunkern did its job using Endeavor, just kind of got wrecked by entry hazards, so it is always entertaining to watch the little thing do work like that. So overall, after that, Bisharp ended up doing quite a lot of the work after that because the Oblongs didn't really have a decent Bisharp counter aside from Landorus. Well, Landorus T is probably not the best Bisharp counter now that I think about it, but he did have Entei, which was able to, I believe, Sacred Fire to death. And at the end of the battle, I think it was Diancie and Hawlucha versus, I forgot what the Oblong's last 2 Pokemon was, but an interesting set on Hawlucha was that it had Fire Punch, of all things. And it actually ended up working very well against the Mew in this case, because I just don't think he had much to hit the thing with. So overall, it was a pretty decent battle. I mean, brownie points for Sunkern all the way, in my opinion. And this led to a 2-0 victory for the Phoenix Sunkerns. Moving on to our next battle, we have the New York Metangs versus the Oakland Rose Raiders. Looking at the team matchup, I definitely see a lot of hyper offense in Palmyran's team, aside from Florges. While the Metangs team, on the other hand, it looks fairly balanced with a mix of both special and physical attackers. So that's all I can really tell from just looking at the teams. It looks kind of like the Metangs are a little bit weak to Aerodactyl in this case, considering how Aerodactyl could always have the possibility of rock and ground attacks, for that matter. Getting into what happened in the battle, this was an overall super quick battle in my opinion. I mean, the 2 Pokemon that did most of the work in this entire battle was Palmyran's Megalopunny and Aerodactyl. I'm just gonna say that. In this battle, though, the Megalopunny had Heal Bell of all things, so I do think that was pretty neat to attach a random support move like that onto a normally really offensive Mega Pokemon like Lopunny. And it did work out for the most part because his Latios was paralyzed and that just got cured immediately. Midway through the battle, though, is when that Aerodactyl on that team just started to wreak complete and utter havoc. It one-shotted Thunderous T, it dealt with Victini and Cobalion pretty easily with Earthquake and Stone Edge and stuff. I think its strongest move was Aerial Ace in this case, but I mean, at only 60 base power, there's only so much they can really do. In just the end, Mega Lopunny just ended up picking off whatever was left, so overall, really quick battle. This led to a 4-0 victory for the Oakland Rose Raiders. Next up, we have the Portland Timbers versus the Washington Charizards. So, looking at this team, it definitely looks like both teams could benefit from the rain pretty easily, with, of course, the Charizards team being a mainly rain-themed team just from the quick glance at it. But it also looks like the Timbers have kind of expected this rain strategy and brought their own set of Pokemon to deal with this rain, or even possibly synergize with it, such as Zapdos, I know, can have Thunder or just use Hurricane. I don't think Zapdos gets Hurricane. Azumarill can really benefit from the rain, especially with like all the different water attacks that it can have. And even Volcarona can benefit from the rain, because I know for sure that that thing can get Hurricane as well. You can definitely tell that Togevar just expected the rain theme team in this battle. The only problem is that I want to say that there was like a lot of hacks in this battle for the most part. Like, the Kingdra especially was very threatening to Togevar's team, in which case in the rain with Swift Swim and all, it got at least one waterfall flinch, which mattered. The Timbers missed a Mega Horn at a certain point in the battle. That was pretty unfortunate. I do want to say that while the Timbers prepared well against the rain team, a lot of their Pokemon just don't really stand up too well against water attacks. Like, while Volcarona can easily work well in the rain with Hurricane and all that, it can easily die to water moves by itself alone. So, I mean, I do think that the Timbers prepared well expecting the rain. I just do think that the tight matchups and also a little bit of hacks played in how the battle ended, so this ended with a 4-0 victory for the Washington Charizards. Moving on to our last battle. Oh my god, where do we even start with this one? What better way to end the season than to have pretty much half your team go out with a bang? Or in other words, just explode. Pretty much in this battle, Matty Brolick told me that he was going to have a joke team because he knew that he was guaranteed to get into the playoffs. So, he brought a bunch of different interesting sets, to say the least. That being both Bronzong and Fortress having Explosion. He brought Choice Specs Amoonguss with Hidden Power Rock. And of course he brought like some serious Pokemon to the field, such as Crawdon, Azelf. I don't even know if he put Explosion on Azelf, I can't remember. And of course Tyranitar. So overall, this battle was possibly one of the most fun battles to watch in a long time, because whenever Fortress or Bronzong was out, you could just tell that they were just gonna go boom or whatever. And it did work in one of the cases, because a Lucario, after using Close Combat twice in a row, will die to an explosion from either one of them. So that was pretty interesting. Amoonguss was tricked a Choice Scarf away from his Choice Specs item. So that was the set did work out for the most part. He did lock himself into Hidden Power Rock upon a Talonflame switch in, which barely missed out on the KO. That was possibly one of the most funniest plays I've seen in a long time, having Hidden Power Rock on an Amoonguss of all things, instead of the logical Hidden Power Fire for Lucario, Jirachi, or Breloom. But no, Hidden Power Rock just for the Firebird. These weird strategies did work out in the long run, because Crawdon and Tyranitar weren't eventually able to do with the likes of that Lucario, Jirachi, Tentacruel, Belly Drum, Clefable. That was kind of interesting to see too, Belly Drum, Clefable. So I do think both teams did a very job with their creativity, to say the least. And this led to a 3-0 victory for the St. Louis Reshiram. And that concludes the Week 11 recap. Thank you for being with me all this time. I'm your host, Dave, and I will see you all later.